All you people are so scared of me. Most days I take that as a compliment.
This is Pitch Black. It's a taut indie sci-fi thriller released in the year 2000. It features Vin Diesel as a wayward bounty hunter with the compelling secret ability to see in the dark. The movie was a surprise hit and helped propel Mr. Diesel to the world-famous superstar that he is. However, despite a few lackluster attempts at mining the potential of his character, nothing has come close to the Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. As previously mentioned, Pitch Black was released in 2000 and cost $23 million to make. Written and directed by David Twohy, the film made close to $50 million at the box office and a considerable amount more on DVD. Thus, when it came time for the early 2000s gold rush of studio franchise building to happen, it only made sense to give Riddick a shot. They opted to give him a solo vehicle, timed to release with the other new franchises. He could have been the new Neo or Jack Sparrow, a household name that the studio could return to over and over and over again. Strangely, the formula they opted to pursue was a bit more unconventional. Riddick was pivoted into Space Conan, with David Twohy returning to write and direct a new big-budget space fantasy epic version of the character titled Chronicles of Riddick. The powers that be decided that this was the moment. They were going to copy the playbook of Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean, and The Matrix, and they were going to make this a multimedia extravaganza. Time to release simultaneously: Chronicles of Riddick: Dark Fury, an animated 35-minute film directed by Aeon Flux director Peter Chung, an action figure line, and novelization by sci-fi stalwart Alan Dean Foster were all received to different degrees. Hopes were high that the cult fandom of Pitch Black would propel Chronicles of Riddick and its ancillary merchandising efforts into rivaling that of the previously mentioned culturally defining franchises. However, it just didn't. By all metrics, it was pretty much a failure across the board. Despite all that lost potential, the most well-received aspect of this multimedia experiment was Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. Equal parts Half-Life and Splinter Cell, Butcher Bay follows the titular Furion antihero as he attempts to escape from a prison titled Butcher's Bay. Let's back up for a second and say that most games created as essentially marketing tie-ins for big feature film franchises have a less than stellar reputation. To add an even more confusing layer on top of this story, Riddick isn't a character that had a massive following. He's kind of like the Avatar films. They come out, they make money, but leave almost no cultural impact. Except in Riddick's case, they don't even really make any money. And yet, Vin Diesel has a soft spot for the character, so studios keep taking the gamble. But honestly, this game might be the best advocate for continuing to keep trying to make Riddick work on the big screen. Butcher Bay is a standalone, continuity-free prequel. If you've never seen any of the other stories with Riddick in them, doesn't matter. It's just a good prison escape game influenced by Escape from Alcatraz. And if you have, you understand that the bounty hunter that's dropping Riddick off at Butcher Bay in the beginning of the game is William Johns from Pitch Black. That's where the game starts, with you being dropped off at the prison, and then finding your way around the map doing jobs for various criminals and prison residents. You're basically killing time until, you guessed it, there's a riot. And then the story really kicks off. The gameplay is a hybrid of first-person shooter, stealth game, and melee combat sequences. The thing that sets it apart from other games of its ilk is that the game is dead set on being an equal installment in the franchise. Despite being produced over just an 18-month period in order to hit the release window of the movie, it feels considered and intentional about its choices. Add to that the fact that Vin Diesel and David Twohy worked with the developers to ensure that the game's aesthetic, narrative, and tone would match the film, and this thing works in ways that most video game tie-ins just simply don't. A big part of the game's success was the titular character of Riddick himself. He's cruel, self-serving, and brutal in a way that most protagonists just don't have the privilege of being. So in the game, when you're tasked with taking someone out or shooting a bunch of guards who are in your way, it doesn't feel out of character. In fact, it feels like a more logical extension of the narrative than some of the subsequent sequels do. To add to the successes of this game, the continuity aspect of it is handled really well.
Where the hell can I get eyes like that?
You dig up a doctor.
In Pitch Black, Riddick talks about having undergone surgery to retrofit his eyes to be able to see in the dark. And in Chronicles of Riddick, he is repositioned as the last of a race known as the Furians, and he's been prophesized to be the chosen one that will defeat an ancient cult of religious warlords known as the Necromongers. Butcher Bay recognizes some of these pivots and sets some narrative seeds that will help the viewer accept this retcon more willingly. One of the things the game struggles at, however, is its melee combat system. The shooting and stealth sequences are both pretty well put together. However, the melee combat sequences essentially just amount to you holding down the block control, waiting for your enemy to try and punch you, and then hitting them one punch at a time. The level of strategy and movement controls required for these sequences is a bit repetitive and boring. The heights that Butcher Bay ascend to are undoubtedly due to Diesel and Twahi's involvement though, with multiple sources saying that Twahi pushed for very specific narrative ideas to be incorporated into the game and for the developers' RPG elements to be discarded. Yeah, at one point in the development cycle, this game was going to have a role-playing game aspect to it. Thankfully, that was abandoned. Diesel's love for Riddick is all over this game though. The character is dark, terse, and almost monosyllabic, just like he should be. And multiple sources say that during the voice recording, Diesel rewrote lines himself and discarded whole monologues due to the writers giving Riddick too much to say. The game was released to healthy sales of roughly 450,000 units for Xbox and 30,000 for PC. However, after the failure of the feature and Dark Fury failing to launch a TV show, most thought of the whole Chronicles of Riddick experiment to be a failure compared to the other franchise launching studio endeavors. But what no one expected out of this was that Butcher Bay would be a truly memorable piece of media. In fact, the game has proven to have a strange sense of staying power and truly developed a cult following. So much so that it's been re-released 3 times. The game received an expanded developer's cut towards the end of 2004, and in 2009, a full remake of it with altered graphics, upscaled gameplay, and melee and stealth fighting fixes were included in the Chronicles of Riddick Assault on Dark Athena sequel game. To this day, Escape from Butcher Bay is remembered as having over-delivered on the promise of a pseudo rush-to-market gaming tie-in, but with a story that's simple and direct, and just as dark and gritty as you'd expect from a film featuring Riddick, it's carved out a very impressive spot for itself in the pantheon of games starring Vin Diesel. If someone brings up Butcher Bay when talking about movie tie-in games, that's how you know they really know their stuff. This game is both criminally underrated and went above and beyond what anyone would have expected of it. It stayed true to the universe of the films, expanded the backstory of the characters, and had exciting and relatively inventive mechanics. Games made to release and coast off the marketing of a movie aren't what they used to be. In fact, that barely happens in the same way, if at all. The gaming world has basically moved on from this business strategy, and arguably this is a good thing. For every Spider-Man 2 the game, we have Superman 64 or the Fight Club video game. Just an endless list of who asked for this. Sure, every once in a blue moon you get something like Escape from Butcher Bay or The Matrix or Lord of the Rings games, but most of the time you're suffering through the X-Men Origins Wolverine game. So why has this fad faded away? Is it because the gaming public finally caught up to the fact that these games weren't very good? Or the fact that there's just better ways to market movies? Honestly, it's probably just the simple fact that gaming is a behemoth industry and the film side of things isn't needed to guarantee financial returns. As of 2024, the film industry is roughly estimated to be a $100 billion industry, whereas the gaming industry is estimated to be over $200 billion. That puts things into stark relief, doesn't it? The gaming world is almost twice the size of the movie industry. If anything, this strategy has flipped. Games are now being used as the strategic anchoring device for large-scale film and TV productions. At the end of the day, Riddick probably isn't going anywhere. After the failure of Chronicles of Riddick, the dust settled, and then a new lower-budget film simply titled Riddick was released in 2013. There's rumblings of a new version of the character every couple years. And maybe we will get a return to glory for Vin Diesel's pet character. But for right now, we should all just be thankful that all of the millions of dollars spent trying to make Riddick a thing, the game is the best piece of the franchise. Well, that's all we have for this episode of Nerdstalgic Gaming. What do you think? Do you remember Escape from Butcher Bay fondly? Should we make a video about the other Riddick games? Is the future of Riddick's legacy in gaming as opposed to on the big screen? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, please like and subscribe for more videos just like this.